Olivia, and welcome to another 10-minute live spark. Um, these quick sessions are where we pause to reflect, to reset, and reignite how we show up as leaders in our schools. So, without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Today's topic is focused on the leadership power of asking better questions. We have a lot of PDs that talk about how teachers need to formulate questions, how students should be generating questions. But as leaders in our schools, we need to be the ones modeling better questions to get not only our staff to think more critically, but it just tumbles over into the students because everything comes from the top. And we see that in politics, we see that in our families, we see that in businesses that depending on how the top sets the tempo, the rest of the people eventually follow or at least want to look up and try to duplicate what they see. So, this is especially close to my heart because it's the opening focus is on my upcoming book, the question driven principle, how to navigate uncertainty with calm, clarity, and curiosity, which will be live on Kindle in just a few weeks. It originally was an ebook that I wrote last year, and it was called A Curious Principle, but I reformatted it to each chapter to focus on a question and going through the chapter to answer the question, to have practice so that you come out with something you can implement and something that will have impact in your schools. So let me take you back to a call that I had last spring with a principal. I'll call her Monica. And Monica basically said to me, I feel like I'm supposed to have the answers, Olivia, all the time. And when I don't, I feel like I'm failing. It's kind of like a student asking a teacher a question and the teacher doesn't have the answer. But all the students are looking at you like, teacher, you're supposed to know it. You're supposed to have the answer. But is this the right format? Is this really how we need to set it up? So it sounds very familiar in both the classroom setting and in the administration setting. And I asked her, what if leadership wasn't about having the answers, but about having better questions, holding better questions? And then something shifted for her because, again, we're in this society where there are more problems than solutions. Just know that. That's why everyday businesses are being created. Why? Because they're trying to solve people's problems. There are more problems than solutions, but at the end of the day, instead of focusing on the answers, our questions can really help us get to the root cause. And in the book, I talk about the see and pose stages of the Spark Leadership Method. They're simple, but they're very powerful. Okay, so the see part invites you to pause long enough to observe what's actually happening, not what your mind has already decided. And we do this a lot because the mind is set, especially if we're experts and we have authority, the mind is set just to focus on the answer, to focus on, okay, I got this information, I talked to this person, I'm going to make these assumptions. But when you really take the time to see a situation, it really invites you to pause and really think about what is actually happening, not what I assume is happening. And the second point is to pose. It's about asking better questions, not jumping to quick solutions because it's kind of like, you're bleeding and someone's putting a band-aid on it and that's really not going to solve the problem. Like what is the root cause? What is causing these things to happen? And when we think about what's causing it, our questions will help lead us to the root cause. So, too often we react, we rush, we solve the wrong problems because we never stop to ask the right questions. And how many of us have seen movies like this, or where people are in a quick hurry to solve something and actually get themselves in more trouble because they didn't ask the right questions. Or, I had a friend who was dating a man and she never asked the man if he was married. Okay, he said, "Well, you never asked me." So, I mean, this asking the right questions is important, right? Because you get yourself in trouble. And when you lead with inquiry, you build trust, you lower defensiveness, because people are less defensive when people ask questions, because that means I want to know, I want to get all of the information. I don't want to jump to conclusions. I don't want to make assumptions. And you gain clarity and you invite collaboration. And we keep talking about, these 21st century skills, and we need to collaborate and we need trust and we want people to ask questions, but it's a lot of being vulnerable. It's a lot of exposure and it's hard because we're afraid. We're afraid to do these things because, first of all, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. We don't have the answer yet. It's okay. Actually, not having the answer helps model what do we do when we don't have the answer? What are the steps? What's the process? There should be a process. It shouldn't just be let's jump in and let's do something. And the more we can model it from a leadership perspective, the more we're going to have our teachers modeling it and asking better questions also in staff meetings to show that they really are vetted in our goals and our objectives for the year. So, there are basically three central questions to ask as a leader, things that you should ask yourself as a leader. The first question: what's the real issue underneath this reaction? So, what's really causing this reaction? And we see this all the time with classroom behavior. And when we see a boy is acting out, maybe it's after lunch, maybe it's early in the morning, and he decides, to get in a confrontation with a student. And then before you know it, it's with the teacher. And maybe it was something that actually happened at the house. So sometimes we want to de escalate things and we teach teachers how to approach people. How your day going? Oh, you don't look too well today. Can I do something to support you? I'm so happy you made it here today. So asking those kind of questions, being proactive, sometimes we can get to the root cause of things before we react to them. The second question is, who's not being heard here? And what might they say if they were? So a lot of times we're making decisions, especially for our babies, and they not there in the room. Like, what would they say? Like, think about that opinionated student at your school. What would they have to say about your new policy or about um, a new curriculum? What would be their response? What would be a parent's response? So, the more you can kind of put yourself into their shoes, the better prepared you'll be, not to react, but to reflect and respond in a calm and clear way. And the third question is, what would change if I got curious instead of certain? Now, that's something you have to think about. What do you think could actually change if your energy changed towards wonder and curiosity instead of always feeling like I have to be certain, I have to be sure, because there's so many things that are not 100%. So many things every day is by chance, it's by alignment, it's about, what we're thinking, what we're attracting. So stop trying to focus on being certain all the time and focus on like discovering your leadership styles, discovering the strengths and the potential of your staff members, and discovering the wisdom that sits in under your roof every day that you may not be tapping into as much, because again we could be making assumptions. So these are the questions that can move us from managing to leading, from surviving to seeing. So our team minutes about up. Our quick takeaway as leadership isn't about being right, it's about staying open. If you take nothing from this spark, take this: questions are not a weakness, they are your greatest strength. And my book, The Question Driven Principle, is a love letter to every leader who's been carrying too much and questioning herself in silence. So it will be available on Kindle in just a few weeks. But if you want to access it early or be a part of a possible book club, please just DM me or put a little message in the chat box so I'll know, hey, I would love to have early access because I would love to get more principals or assistant principals to take a look or superintendents to take a look at it before it's actually published. So thanks for taking 10 minutes to pause and get curious with me today. And I'll be back next week with more sparks and maybe a few more questions. Until then, ask boldly, lead bravely. I'm going to leave you with a new song called Just Imagine.
Just imagine. Mm, yeah. Just imagine, yeah. Just imagine the spark that starts it all. Ooh, there's a glow in their eyes when the question is real, when the lesson becomes more than just what they feel. A whisper of wonder, a curious thought, and suddenly every moment is caught. They're not just learning, they're alive in this space. With every new what if, they're setting the pace. You see, facts fade fast, but the spark will remain. When the heart of a child ignites their brain. Just imagine what a question can do. Turn the why into wow, make the old into new. Just imagine how they rise when they're seen. When we teach with a purpose and dream with a dream. Oh, just imagine curiosity calling. Just imagine your mind's never falling. Wonder is the way, let the classroom shine. Light up their future, one spark at a time. It's not just a job, it's a heartbeat, a flame. We're architects of